Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya. We are organizing a special series of discussions on cloud native security for CloudNative Con and KubeCon. And our next guest is Om Moolchandani, co-founder and CTO of Accuris. Om, it's great to have you on the show once again.
Thank you, Swapnil, for having me.
Something that is interesting, which is happening in the cloud native world, is that unlike traditional IT, cloud security is not an afterthought. Companies are taking security very seriously. But there are still a lot of challenges, hurdles to talk. Security should become part of a developer pipeline. It should not be an afterthought. So I want to know your view. Do you agree with this assessment that security is no longer an afterthought, especially in the cloud native and Kubernetes world?
Absolutely. Look, security in cloud native cannot run with afterthought strategy. The biggest reason for that is the fact that the cost of remediation in cloud native world is extremely high when security is done as an afterthought. And retrofitting security is it's exceedingly difficult. Primary reason for that is that, look, the cloud native world is all about immutability, agility, and ops at speed and scale. So the apps that are deployed on cloud native architectures are designed to scale. Therefore, security has to be baked into it in order for security to match the scalability and speed that is needed to do cloud native architectures. And secondly, to keep the cost of remediation under control, design time, security techniques, DevSecOps are extremely helpful and important. And they also help in achieving cyber hygiene early, which can prevent 80% of security issues that are the reason behind most of the breaches. So that's why it cannot be afterthought, especially in cloud native world.
Also, cloud native world is a bit different from our regular IT stack, which also means the security concerns are also different. We talk about zero trust and all those things. So talk about how different, number one, is security in the cloud native space than traditional IT space, and what unique challenges that poses for, let's say, not only company like Accuris, but also users who want their infrastructure or their workloads to be secure.
The modern security practices have evolved greatly over the last decade, and solutions for many different security problems have been developed and deployed, and yet we see an increasing scale of cyber attacks and breaches, right? So the biggest security concerns for today the organizations still remain at large. The data security problems, they surround the same problems that we have been facing since last decade: critical data security, availability of services for like cloud-based organizations, and protection of company confidential data, which includes customer and employee information, right? So now these reasons and the concerns are still out there at large because of the efficacy of security solutions that are available to address each of these problems. The primary reason is the way these solutions are integrated and configured are not there in terms of adopting the cloud native philosophy and architectures. Now, in my understanding, the existing security capabilities which are available, if they are effectively configured, and then if they are aligned with the cloud native philosophy, which includes the fact that do not introduce new processes, blend with developer workflows, ensure that the immutability of the cloud native infrastructure is kind of kept intact. These security solutions which are available today can make a difference, can make a big difference, and if they're configured correctly. So that's kind of in my opinion the biggest concerns that I see that organizations are facing today with respect to the current set of security technologies that are available.
Right. I also want to kind of go a bit deeper into how does security affect the actual either update, release of new features, because we have seen a lot of reports, and one of the biggest roadblock in rolling out new feature is security. So number one is there any delay in companies rolling out? Number one. Number two is that how can it be fixed? And number three is also sometimes with security, what we see is that if you get attacked, then you might go down. Versus, hey, you know what? We have to apply these patches, and we will have a hit on uptime. So you have to decide you want to do it on weekend or you want to do on weekdays. So there are two or three questions bundled there, but they are also looking at the same solution. To talk about that, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a problem that my industry has been facing since long now, and this is a big fact. Because the security, because it is not aligned with the development processes and practices, right? When security is done by introducing new workflows, new practices, when the new elements are added into the existing, say, pipeline structures, or for that matter, any organization which has adopted agile methodology for doing their, feature releases and updates, especially in the cloud space where, you could release, 10 times a day when it is that agile, it becomes extremely difficult for developers to adopt any security tooling or practice which is not aligned with this fact. And that's what causes the delay in releases. Now, again, from the point of view of uptime, and why, security updates end up affecting uptime. Look into the DevOps and CloudOps teams today. They spend a lot of time taking fast decisions in order to meet SLAs. And I mean, if you cannot make revenue because of the security process, if you don't meet SLA, you don't make revenue, right? You don't make revenue because of security reasons, right, or because of the security processes, then security is of no good use, right? So that's why a lot of times, security updates, which oftentimes require downtime windows, are delayed for an opportune time. Now, this also exposes risk window, yes, but then it's more important for DevOps teams and CloudOps team to release than to make sure that the security is also happening. And that's where, multiple strategies are available to handle, these problems. To begin with, of course, one thing is for vendors, for security vendors, they will have to start infusing security into current developer workflows. End of the, story, period, so that they can streamline with the engineering and development processes for easy adoption and delivery. And then on the cloud ops and prod ops and DevOps side, a lot of different new strategies have emerged. So, for example, the immutable architectures and cloud native architectures are already helping in doing A/B deployment, canary deployment, red blue deployment strategies, which have now become possible, of course, because of the immutable cloud infrastructure and immutable cloud native technologies. These deployment strategies are creating ways, like if you have adopting container technologies, you easily can rip and replace your mitigated or your security updated containers without suffering a downtime, as you will continue to scale using the red blue deployment strategy or canary deployment strategy, where you have some of the containers still running with the services up with old version of your product, and then the new containers will take their spot as the service scalability happens. So without suffering downtime, you can still push security updates. But these technologies are all dependent on cloud native technologies, and of course processes as well, as I said, right? So this is what is happening in the industry to address this problem.
Right. So it seems more or less like, also the fact is that once you have deployed the application, there are billions of instances running, it's very hard to go and fix and patch it. So, but if you take care of it in a very early, that is easier. Which also brings me to the next question, which is more or less about how widespread you are seeing the adoption of DevSecOps and zero trust within the ecosystem.
Interesting. Zero trust is very interesting, and very promising technology. So I, see that community has kind of woken up to the idea of zero trust, and that has happened, of course, recently. The adoption is still in the infancy, but it is bound to grow rapidly from here on. Cloud native, technologies are already aligned with zero trust mechanisms. I mean, take for example service mesh technologies. They are designed with zero trust built in. So the developers now don't even have to implement zero trust explicitly, right? It is so seamless into the app deployment landscape with the help of service mesh, technology, that if you are adopting service mesh, you are automatically doing zero trust. So zero trust adoption definitely is going to, take a boom. Maybe in some more time, it's going to take a little bit more time for these technologies to become kind of mainstream. But all the developer community is extremely excited about zero trust in cloud native. That is supposed to happen. On the other hand, the DevSecOps, right, is already widely adopted today. And because of the reasons that we discussed previously, right, baking security in is much more cheaper than an afterthought. And that's what kind of, encourages DevSecOps so much. It is the cost of remediation is so much under check if you are doing security early in design time as well as, pre-deployment time. That the return of investment is very high when it comes to doing DevSecOps. So it is widely adopted now.
When we look at security, number one is bugs, which are part of software development. When you're writing software, there will be bugs, and those bugs at times become security issues. Number two is in deployment, misconfiguration. That becomes a challenge. One more thing is that when we do talk about bugs, most of the time we don't have to worry about zero-day vulnerabilities. Most of the time what happens is that stack that was some open source stack that was not, there was a bug 3 years ago and the company did not apply a patch. So it's always about something which was already there. So can you talk about, especially in the cloud native area, what are the areas that expose your workload or infrastructure to these exploits outside of misconfigurations and bugs? What are the other things that you should worry about?
So no doubt, your security bugs and misconfigurations and also missing patches, right, can really lead to big security risks. However, there are some, other fundamentals. If they are being followed, right, there is a possibility you will be able to contain the risk and manage the risk a little bit better. Of course, if you haven't fixed a vulnerability and you haven't fixed a bug, or you haven't upgraded a system with a new patch, you will always be at risk. But there are methods available that you can use to contain those risks. And when those methods are also absent, that's where the real threat emerges for your environment. And as an example, right, you may have certain vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, right? But then how much of exposure is available? What is the visibility of your attack surface, right? And how do you manage your accessibility, your access? Take for example, very, very simple example. You might have a particular application vulnerability, which you may or may not be aware of in your production system, right? And if that vulnerability depends upon the exploitation of that vulnerability depends upon a particular privilege, right? Have you managed the privilege? Have you deployed your application with principle of least privileges? If you have done so, chances are high that you will be able to contain the impact of exploitation, even if the vulnerability gets exploited. If the privileges that are provided to that microservice, let's say, in which the vulnerability exists, is contained within a particular trust boundary. So when these aspects are also lacking, which fall under the area of architecture, risk management, threat modeling, if you are not doing such things, then your risk increases multifold. And basically, it is all about visibility and observability. The lack of visibility and observability in cloud native technologies, is anyways going to increase your risk because of two facts. Cloud native technologies, they promote granularity and immutability of building blocks. And they have cloud native technologies have constructs which promote immutability. Now, this causes highly dense environments. Like, you will see cloud native infrastructures having, lots and lots of containers, pods, clusters. So when you have lack of visibility in cloud native, technologies, they create blind spots for you. And when I say lack of visibility, I also mean from security point of view, what are the privileges? What is the accessibility? And so, visibility and observability can tell you whether something is working as per your expectation or not. You need to have, these elements going for you. If you are not at, on top of your game when it comes to fixing misconfiguration and security bugs and patching. So these are the other things that, can affect you at great deal when it comes to security risk.
Thank you for talking about the problem. I want to talk about solutions for a while. We had talked about the challenges. So let's look at Accurics. How do you help ecosystem players to mitigate some of these problems that we talked about?
Very interesting. I mean, when we began our journey, we kept our focus on these, issues that I've been discussing, with you, especially when it comes to cloud native, technologies. So we designed our offering, solving existing problems using the current methodologies that are there within DevOps and developer community to build cloud native infrastructures. We had a principle that our product is not going to introduce any new technique or new strategy to do security which misaligns with the developer workflows. So what we offer is self-healing technologies for cloud native architectures that heal your security problems ahead of time using codified methods, and that's a key for us. So our technologies blend into current developer workflows seamlessly, that help baking security in developers' lifecycle with almost zero resistance. And that's where we have scored high numbers, that we are able to push security into developers' world, not just by creating cool security solutions or methods, but also adopting existing developer lifecycle in delivering them. So that's where we are able to capture developers' mind share as well as usability and adaptability. That's the key in cloud native world.
Thank you so much for taking time out from your schedule and talk about security in the cloud native space and also talk about the solutions that you are working on. I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
Appreciate it.